All right, welcome to Frontline, 6 o'clock here on the East Coast. Happy St. Patty's Day. We begin with some breaking news, though. The Save America Act has passed its first procedural hurdle this afternoon. Now it's moving on to debate. They didn't even think it was going to get this far, but we're going to have more on that in just a bit. Also, Cuba is struggling to revive its power grid after a nationwide blackout left the island without power. Now, Secretary of State Marco Rubio went on to say the current government is unable to fix the nation's problems and new people need to be in charge. Funny enough, Greta Thunberg is actually begging to import oil there. I thought she was against that kind of stuff. And it wasn't 3i Atlas, unfortunately, but a meteor rocking Cleveland earlier today. The space rock entering the Earth's atmosphere at thousands of miles an hour, causing a thunderous boom as it broke apart before reaching the ground. But first, could things not be exactly as they seem with Joe Kent's departure? Let's do this. Okay, so you may have noticed that Trump's director of the National Counterterrorism Center resigned very publicly today with what I think could be a very controversial but also thought-provoking resignation letter. He said, "I cannot in good conscience support the ongoing war in Iran. Iran posed no immediate threat to our nation, and it is clear that we started this war due to pressure from Israel and its powerful American lobby," concluding with, "It was an honor to serve in your administration and to serve our great nation." Now, President Trump responded today from the Oval.
I read his statement. I always thought he was a nice guy, but I always thought he was weak on security, very weak on security. I didn't know him well, but I thought he seemed like a pretty nice guy. But when I read his statement, I realized that it's a good thing that he's out.
Now, normally, Trump goes like completely nuclear on people who leave his admin with criticism on the way out the door. So you have to ask, I mean, that was pretty tame. Why did he not go all the way on Joe? But also, what changed Joe Kent's mind about Iran, Israel, and the security of the homeland? The internet is quick to condemn or support based on just a few tweets, most of which are from outside observers with an opinion, but no actual knowledge of the situation. So before you listen to them, dial in here. Look, I personally, I would have bombed Iran solely based on my experience in the Middle East. I would have done it probably 20 years ago. But this is the same regime that put our sailors on their knees on their own boat, remember that one, killed thousands of U.S. service members in Iraq with their IEDs and chants to death to America all over the country. But very few people are asking what Joe saw that changed his opinion to what it is now. And the reason I'm giving Joe the time of day of this is because he earned that right. Joe did 11 deployments in service to this nation. He also lost his wife to a suicide bomber in Syria. So while people who have served approximately 0 deployments are criticizing him, maybe they should sit this one out. I've known him for quite a few years. And I'm going to give him the time of day because I want to know why he did this. Why did a guy who still, by his own statement, deeply respects Donald Trump and this administration, but yet was willing to resign and essentially commit political suicide over a view that is 180 degrees from where he was 2 years ago, here, September of 2024, when he said that Iran is, in fact, a real threat, saying, quote, "Iran has been after Trump since January of 2020 after he ordered the targeting and killing of the terrorist Qasem Soleimani. This isn't a new threat." So how did we go from that to Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation today? And the other part of his statement this morning, he has a long record of being pro-Israel from when he was running for Congress, September of 2022, on his campaign letterhead. Now, keep in mind, he was not endorsed, nor was he seeking an endorsement from AIPAC, as they had already endorsed his longtime opponent. Joe said, though, "I am intimately familiar with the help that Israel has provided the United States during my military service in the Middle East. My fellow soldiers and I often relied on intelligence provided by the IDF and their intelligence agencies, remember that, to help us accomplish our mission and keep us alive." Now, the United States and Israel share common enemies in the Middle East, from terrorist groups like Hamas, Hezbollah, to the totalitarian government of Iran, he said. So this makes what he said this morning a really big deal. And I'd love to get past the people just like supporting or opposing simply for political or religious loyalties for like half a second. So we can actually have a real conversation here, because you have former opponents now becoming allies, like Cenk Uygur, like calling him a patriot, something that he would not have even considered 12 hours ago. But other staunch MAGAs who originally celebrated his appointment now calling him like the second coming of Satan. Taylor Budowich, the former White House deputy chief of staff for comms and personnel, saying, quote, Joe Kent is a crazed egomaniac who is often at the center of national security leaks while rarely, or never, producing any actual work. He spent all of his time working to subvert the chain of command and undermine the president of the United States. Wow. Well, I guess my question would be to Taylor, as the former chief of staff for personnel, why didn't they can him a long time ago? I mean, you see why my initial instinct here is to question everything. Look, I have absolutely no reference other than the people I've talked to about the quality of work that Joe did or didn't do in his position. I mean, this is just, I'm basing this off of like me knowing him to the degree I do, but all this seems like there's more than meets the eye here. When has Trump not gone absolutely scorched earth on dissenters? I mean, John Bolton being like the perfect example, but Trump stayed pretty respectful of Joe. Another thing that caught my eye, every talking head, every official and White House person rushed to reaffirm that Iran did in fact pose an imminent threat, because that is the sole legal justification for a president to use military powers against a place like Iran without congressional consent. Now, Caroline Leavitt saying, as President Trump has clearly and explicitly stated, he had strong and compelling evidence that Iran was going to attack the United States first. So I don't think she's wrong. But my question is, who gave Donald Trump that intelligence? I'm not blaming Trump. I'm not blaming Caroline Leavitt. They are probably giving us an honest assessment from where they sit. My question is the motive and who is behind the intel. Also, Mike Johnson today said something that perked my interest.
Where Joe Kent is getting his information, but he wasn't in those briefings clearly, because the Secretary of State, the Secretary of War, and everyone, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Kane, they had exquisite intelligence, and we understood that this was a serious moment for us. Had the president waited, I am personally convinced that we would have mass casualties of Americans.
Joe Kent wasn't in that briefing? I mean, why? If Iran was an imminent threat, why was the director of the National Counterterrorism Center not in a briefing about preemptively striking the imminent threat of the #1 state sponsor of terror? Here's the question, though. I believe that Trump made and will make the right decision based on information that he was given. I think he always will. That's why I voted for him 3 times. Mike Johnson probably is doing the same, but there is clearly a gap and a difference between what Joe seems to conclude based on the intel he has seen and what Mike Johnson and the president are being briefed on. How did that gap get there, and who is responsible for that gap? Is the president, the Speaker of the House, and others not being given fully accurate information? I mean, it's happened before.
Intelligence gathered by this and other governments leaves no doubt that the Iraqi regime continues to possess and conceal some of the most lethal weapons ever devised.
Weapons of mass destruction, huh? And after 20 years, I spent 10 in and out of that whole region, trillions of dollars, thousands of American lives, we found approximately 0 WMDs, making my point. Did the intel community feed the highest levels of our government false information to make decisions to do certain things? Did they also feed it to us to believe certain things? You bet they did. You remember Operation Northwoods? That was thankfully squashed and got the chairman of the Joint Chiefs fired. Had a plan to bomb our own military bases during the Cold War to blame the Cuban regime, or the 51 former intel officials, many earlier in their career that went on alongside with that WMD talking point, who backed the false intel reports that the Hunter Biden laptop was not real. Turned out it was. The same ones that said Trump was a Russian asset, that knew it was bad, partisan, and single-sourced intel, but was funneled to the top levels of the same intel community to spend $54 million investigating Trump for something that they all knew was complete BS. The same intel community that employed Peter Strzok, who promised his side piece, Lisa Page, that they would, quote, stop Trump from becoming president. Or this intel community.
You take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you. So even for a practical, supposedly hard-nosed businessman, he's being really dumb to do this.
So is it a bridge too far to at least give consideration that Joe Kent might have thought the president was not getting all the correct info, and that's why he did this? I don't know, but I'm asking the question because something ain't lining up. He didn't do it for fame, because I called him this morning, and he's not doing any media right now. So before the internet and all the foreign policy experts on Twitter weigh in, have we considered all these things? I think the duration of this conflict and the next few weeks will determine some of these answers. Newsmax contributor General Blaine Holt and Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, both of you guys have extensive intel backgrounds in this stuff. Tony, I'll go to you first.
Sure.
Could it be more than meets the eye?
Yeah, look, I've been in a situation where intelligence was made out of whole cloth. We were running a high-level Iraqi operation during the run-up to the war, and Doug Feith in the Office of Special Plans manufactured, Carl, out of whole cloth false information regarding the weapons of mass destruction. This is documented in my book. This is not something classified. So I've witnessed this, where you have an entire effort within the government to bypass the actual intelligence capabilities because the intelligence community won't say what they want. So I'm giving Joe Kent a big pass here, and read his letter carefully. I mean, read the details. One of the things he says, there was a high-level influence campaign. Carl, we've seen this influence campaign within basically bleed over into MAGA world, where you have a civil war going on that's based on this very issue. So I understand Joe's service. I don't question it. He lost his wife in combat. I think we need to take a pause and listen to what he's saying with serious consideration.
Yeah, and hear the whole thing out before jumping down.
Absolutely.
But General, this is interesting. The Director of National Intelligence, who he reported directly to, Tulsi Gabbard, chimed in after this announcement, writing in part, very ambiguous statement, quote, "The Office of the Director of National Intelligence is responsible for helping coordinate and integrate all intelligence to provide the President and the Commander-in-Chief with the best information available to inform his decisions." Going on to say, after carefully reviewing all the information before him, President Trump concluded that the terrorist Islamic regime in Iran posed an imminent threat, and he took action based on that conclusion. Nothing dogging Joe Kent, nothing. It's just very ambiguous.
You know, I think we're going to see Joe Kent serving his country in other ways going forward. I want to tell you that I'm very disappointed in how many people came out and just decided that they were going to be the judge and the jury in 5 hot seconds, because Joe was a critical thinker. He analyzed the situation. And when he didn't agree with how it went down, Joe did not say he's going to miss the Ayatollahs and the regime in that country, or that they don't generally threaten the planet. He didn't say that. Right. But instead of making it all about him, what Joe did was he quietly resigned. He made the letter transparent so nobody could cook his words, because you have to worry about that in the swamp. This is a man with complete integrity. And yesterday I was a Joe Kent fan. Today I've doubled that proposition. This is a great patriot, and I think he served our president here, Carl. And the way he did that was, instead of being the bureaucrat that no one can hear you scream, he basically put a spotlight on this and said, "Mr. President, you need to look over here."
Yeah,
and I think the president's going to do just that.
I'm actually very interested to see where this goes in the next couple of days. I want to give you guys each a little less than a minute here. Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton addressed this news also, but listen to this.
Anyone who says that we're already losing, or we're in a quagmire, or the president can't succeed because of the threat that Iran poses to the Hormuz right now is akin to saying Eisenhower is losing because he hadn't made it to Berlin within 2 weeks of D-Day. It's going to take some time to achieve those military objectives, but in the end, we will have defanged the Iranian regime.
But, Tony, the big thing that I didn't catch there, it almost seems like Tom Cotton is leaving the door open, not to a 4-week campaign, but a longer campaign.
Yeah. Look, there's far more justification for President Trump's actions here than President Obama's action in Libya. What were we going to do, Carl? Wait until atomic mushroom clouds were over Riyadh and Saudi Arabia fired on by the Iranians? No. Yeah. We had to do something. And the animus between the Iranians and us goes back to 1979. Like you, I had to fight the IRGC in combat in Afghanistan in 2003, 2004.
But
this was justified, and it may take a little bit longer. Okay.
General, I still believe that this was justified and it needed to be done. However, some questions.
Many questions. And the other thing is we have to get to what happened up in the UK. They never blocked the assets of the new Ayatollah ever. They let him run a $1 billion fund for his dad. Lloyd's of London tried to stop the Straits all by themselves. We were denied basing in Diego Garcia and in northern Scotland. And now Europe won't help us open the Straits.
Right.
There is a far bigger thing going on here. There is a greater adversary, and it's not in Joe Kent's resignation letter.
Yeah.
So figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm anxious to see what happens. Blaine, Tony, we appreciate it.
Great. Thank you.
All right, coming up, this city that never sleeps is turning off the lights maybe at 11. Dare I say you get what you voted for? We got that new bill later on in the show. But first, the Senate kicked off the Save America Act vote this afternoon. Now, Senate Majority Leader John Thune says the numbers show big support so far, but don't underestimate the Democrats and some Republicans' ability to get on the wrong side of what America actually wants. Next.
Hey, my man, we're asking people what happened to global warming.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I think it's a facade. I think it's fake.
They used to talk about global warming a lot. This is the coldest I think I've ever felt in my life these last 5-6 days.
It's definitely been a lot colder than I remember growing up as a child.
Are you Newsmax?
Yes, ma'am.
My dad is a World War II veteran. He fought in World War II. He's 101. He watches your show in Arizona all the time.
Buying a new car? You need WeatherTech. Perhaps a nice used car? You need WeatherTech. Or maybe you're still driving Old Faithful. You need WeatherTech. No matter the age of your vehicle, American-made WeatherTech products are the solution. Because messes don't care what year your vehicle is.
See? You do need WeatherTech.
Order your American-made protection at WT.com.
Power of disease.
Ticks and fleas.
Intestinal worm.
15 million dogs and counting know Simparica Trio offers triple protection against heartworm disease, ticks and fleas, and intestinal worms, all with one monthly chew. This drug class has been associated with neurologic side effects, including seizures. Use with caution in dogs with or without a history of these disorders. Don't just protect, triple protect.
Millions of Americans rely on a statin to reduce cholesterol, but statins can deplete CoQ10 levels. I recommend Cunol CoQ10 with 3 times better absorption and the #1 cardiologist recommended form. It helps replenish what statins deplete. Cunol, the brand I trust.
There's the measurement fee, delivery fee, restocking fee.
And installation.
That's not my department.
With Empire's Home Floor Advantage, we have clear, all-inclusive pricing.
800-588-2300
Today. House Oversight Committee just subpoenaed Attorney General Pam Bondi to appear April 14th to answer questions related to the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. Chairman James Comer saying that the committee is reviewing the, quote, possible mismanagement of the federal government's investigation of the Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and the circumstances and substance investigations of Epstein's death. They believe, and so do I, that she failed to follow the law by turning over the documents required by the deadline that Congress sets. Now, if Congress finds her in contempt of that law, they're going to refer criminal charges to the DOJ for prosecution. Okay. Florida Congresswoman and member of the House Oversight Committee, Paulina Luna. Ma'am, I'm glad that this is still alive because a lot of people thought it would go away with the thing that's going on in Iran. However, you guys have stayed on this.
Yeah, look, the Jeffrey Epstein investigation, I think until we can really charge someone, I think the American people are going to be unsatisfied with the investigations. And look, I was actually protected under the speech and debate clause and actually read some of the names of individuals that were given plea deals after they were known to have trafficked young girls. And so I don't think that that ever should have happened. I've also encouraged the Department of Justice to reopen and relook at those plea deals and potentially consider charging some of these individuals under the civil rights statute or civil rights violations, because that's outside of the statute of limitation. So look, we're going to continue on this. I know next we have Bill Gates, and the chairman has also confirmed that we'll be bringing in some of those co-conspirators to to hear what they have to say.
I mean, this is great because, like, if I file my taxes 3 months late, I'm going to minimum paying fines, maybe going to jail. Do you expect any consequences for the fact that they just didn't provide you with stuff for like 3 months after the deadline?
Well, one of the problems that we had was there was an Obama-appointed judge in New York that actually had ordered a second review of all documents before they could be released. And so there was an issue with the deadline because of that forced review. I think that that was political on behalf of one of these activist judges. But ultimately, too, we saw that some of the documents at the DOJ had redactions that were given to them previously from the FBI. And then, as you know, late last year, I had actually found that there was destruction of evidence under the former deputy director of the FBI pertaining to Jeffrey Epstein. So I think even the files that we do have are probably only a partial picture, but even then so, you can see that there's some very damning stuff in there. And I think that some of these co-conspirators, again, need to be charged under different statutes because I do believe that they were engaged in trafficking.
Yeah, I wonder if she'll inform us what the Dow is during that hearing as well. The Senate also kicked off its marathon debate on the SAVE Act. Now, just this afternoon, they advanced another procedural vote forward, 51-48. But, you know, how they get it passed, I don't know. But some GOP members are saying, hey, let's at least enforce the talking filibuster if we're not going to blow the whole filibuster up as itself. What do you say, sir, ma'am?
Look, this is 100% just for show. They are hoping that this pacifies people like myself, people like Senator Mike Lee and Senator Scott, that have been saying that this is only going to pass if you embrace the talking filibuster. I don't think that Thune has any intention of doing that. I actually used my little network in the Senate and got that information earlier today and put out a tweet to actually reference that. And I'm also now being told that they have no intentions of doing anything with the SAVE Act, that they're hoping that it'll just go away and that people will stop calling them. And that's completely unacceptable, especially because the majority of these senators, well, they grovel for President Trump's support and then fail to deliver on the very basics. And so I was very happy to see President Trump said, if you don't vote for it, you're not getting my support for your reelection. And I think that that's the right position to take. But again, look, we're going to have to stick this on FISA. FISA is one of those must-pass things. They're already kind of starting the fear tactic and fear-mongering on the House floor. If you don't vote for FISA, you're going to be responsible for Americans dying. I would say that if we don't have people that are rightfully elected by the American people that result in failed leadership and failed foreign policy, that's when Americans die. And so this is something that we're going to really hold the line on. And as you saw today, there was over 40 Republicans that refused to vote for Senate legislation. That will be a similar vote on FISA. I don't think they have the votes to pass it as is.
No, that's crazy to me. Also, the fact that, like, this is like an 80-20 issue in America. So, Congresswoman Paulina Luna,
it's ridiculous. Yeah.
No, thank you very much for keeping this fight up on both Epstein and the SAVE Act. We'll come back to you. All right, for more on the SAVE Act, I want to bring in my friend, CPAC Chairman Matt Schlapp. All right, this is huge that it passed this hurdle, but some people are saying that it's just not going to get anywhere because of the filibuster.
Yeah, so in the old days, they used to have real filibusters. Filibuster means talk a bill to death, and you got to love the Senate. They decided that that would be too much work, so you just have to threaten to talk a bill to death, and that kills the bill. And Mike Lee's saying, hey, that shouldn't work anymore.
Yeah. No, it's just unbelievable to me. And I think that they should just blow the filibuster and do this whole thing anyway, because it's I say all the time, this is why people need guns in this country, because a government is willing to go 80% against the country. It's unbelievable. I want to talk about Virginia Democrats, who are also just absolutely ridiculous. Redistricting for, quote, fairness in their new proposed constitutional amendment, asking voters to answer this question, sir. It says, quote, should the Constitution of Virginia be amended to allow the General Assembly to temporarily adopt new congressional districts to restore fairness in the upcoming elections while ensuring Virginia's standard redistricting process resumes for all future redistricting after the 2030 census? My question is, who's defining what's fair?
Yeah. So what the Democrats did across the country is they worked with the do-gooder groups, and they set up all these commissions in all these states. They set up non-political processes to set the congressional districts. And then lo and behold, now that they're showing us that they're Marxists and all they care about is raw power, they won majorities in the legislature in Virginia, won the governorship. And now they don't care so much about good government. It's just about stealing as many congressional districts as possible. And Carl, you know why they must do it? Because Orange Man bad.
Yeah.
Dictator in the White House, you know, this is their language.
Obviously, I mean, that's what the root of basically everything, Matt. But Spamberger, the governor of Virginia, is moving to sign legislation in the same state. 50% of state contracts under this would have to be minority-owned businesses. Basically, it's like if you're white, you're ineligible for 50%. Democrats always talk about institutional racism. This is the last example of institutional racism that exists.
Yeah, and this is illegal. And what's happening in Virginia, this is very important for everybody to understand because I'm talking right here from Virginia, Northern Virginia, is Chicago went woke and it's dangerous. New York City went woke and it's dangerous, and the taxes are too high and crime is off the charts. The problem here is these are the states that surround our nation's capital. Mm-hmm. Virginia is basically turning into New York City before our eyes. They're making all types of Second Amendment rights now illegal. They're going to raise taxes to a neighborhood of where California is. Mm-hmm. And this means everything around your nation's capital is unsafe. They won't want you there. It is a very dangerous thing for America. And you're going to see the same kind of out-migration out of Virginia that you've seen out of Illinois, that you've seen out of California, because even sane liberals don't want this garbage.
Yeah. And it's crazy. I wish I had more time, but, real quick, 15 seconds. Texas, the deadline for someone to drop out between Cornyn and Paxton is tonight at 5 p.m. Trump still has not made an endorsement.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's happening in Texas is we're going to have CPAC in a week, and we've invited John Cornyn to come speak. Ken Paxton's already agreed to speak. Mm-hmm. And the people of Texas want everyone to hear their voices, and I think the president is listening to the people of Texas, and I think that shows leadership.
Yeah, and Paxton is ahead in almost every poll.
That's
Matt
right.
Schlapp.
And he wins every time.
Yes, sir. All right, we appreciate it, sir. Good luck at CPAC next week.
Thanks, Carl.
All right, coming up, RFK Jr. tries to take on Big Pharma, and another lib judge that no one voted for now gets to decide what vaccines your children have to take. Your role, bro? Next.
Newsmax.
Shoots it straight. No talking down to me.
Don't tell me how to think.
Don't tell me how to think. Don't tell me how to think.
I trust Newsmax. Newsmax.
They don't tell me how to think. They let me decide.
Real news for real people.
I still love to surf, snowboard, and of course skate. So I take Cunol Magnesium to support my muscle and bone health. Cunol's high absorption magnesium glycinate helps me get the full benefits of magnesium. Cunol, the brand I trust.
From the beginning, America has depended on the courage and resilience of those who serve in our armed forces. For 250 years, they've been there for us without fail, putting their lives on the line, defending our freedom, helping us become the nation we are today. At Wounded Warrior Project, our mission honors the past by building a better future for post-9/11 veterans, service members, and their families. Our life-changing programs and services help warriors improve their mental and physical health, access the VA benefits they've earned, and connect with their communities, their purpose, and each other. Warriors have given us their best. Join us in supporting them through the next 250 years of strength, resilience, and recovery. Visit woundedwarriorproject.org/USA250.
If you still have bad breath by lunchtime, your mouthwash isn't working. Smart Mouth is the only mouthwash that prevents bad breath for 24 hours. This is the only mouthwash I recommend. Upgrade your mouthwash to Smart Mouth today and never have bad breath again.
This isn't your average pill. This is Rose Sparks. Rose Sparks. Rose Sparks. Rose Sparks.
Rose Sparks is a fast-acting solution because it dissolves under your tongue.
Rose Sparks.
Guys, get started today.
Connect with a provider to find out if Rose Sparks are right for you.
I wish I could just watch live sports at home.
Oh, Sling let you do that.
I wish I could watch live sports at home at a low price.
Sling let you do that. Sling let you do that. Sling let you do that.
Yeah, well, I wish I could watch live sports and pause my subscription when my team sucks and still get hundreds of channels for free.
Sling lets you do that.
Choose and customize your channel lineup or pause and watch for free. Sling lets you do that. Base package required.
Some wireless companies say that they stand for something. What exactly do they stand for, and why won't they say it out loud? Let me tell you what Patriot Mobile stands for. They stand for the lives of the unborn. They stand for the Second Amendment and the right to protect yourself and your family. They stand for our veterans and first responders who sacrifice so much for our freedom. Make the switch to Patriot Mobile today and support a company that doesn't just say they stand for something, but one that stands for the things that matter the most.
Forget the warm-up. DirecTV got hot. They're on fire with more MLB games than anyone.
Welcome to the big leagues, kid.
How old are you?
11.
Total Beats, America's best-selling Beats brand, is available at Walmart. Total Beats blood pressure support soft chews contain a key ingredient clinically shown to deliver 2 times better blood pressure support. Take control of your health. Head to Walmart and get Total Beats blood pressure support soft chews today.
Well, RFK tries to reel in Big Pharma, and a liberal judge blocks him. Like, I wish I could say I'm surprised about this. A Biden-appointed federal judge just shut down RFK Jr.'s childhood vaccine reform. Now, blocking the HHS vaccine schedule overhaul from 17 to 11 vaccines, blocking the end of the universal newborn hepatitis B shots. Hep B is an STD. Why does a newborn need that? Okay. The judge suspended the new ACIP committee and nullified all the committee votes since June. This is Judge Brian Murphy, of course, well known, however, for going against the Trump administration. Let's see. He blocked the deportation orders for some of those things. He's had the Supreme Court stay some of his earlier injunctions. Federal appeals courts have also overturned his decisions. But Murphy ruling on vaccines over the HHS secretary. Right. Like, what? Why should we listen? They always say, well, he's not a doctor. Well, he's not a doctor. But the root of the issue here is that the government spends all this time, this effort, this money, and policies to force people to get some vaccines, yet they make zero effort to actually make people healthy. Instead, we resort to this body positivity movement, or more recently, the fat jab, Ozempic, took that away. I mean, how about we spend some actual time making people live a healthier lifestyle, like RFK is doing, so they're not so fat and sick all the time? Former CDC Director Dr. Robert Redfield, sir, a judge, I don't think I've ever heard of anything like this.
Yeah, Carl, it's really disappointing. Obviously, people argue that we need to let the scientific community make these recommendations, and then we had turnover, and now we have a judge. Very disappointed at the AMA and the Infectious Disease Society, the Pediatric Society, all those plaintiffs that put this lawsuit in place, and obviously I'm disappointed in the decision. I'm confident it will be overturned.
Again.
But it just caused chaos.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's another perfect example of needing to reform the system. We've shown this before, but here's the death rates in the U.S. from 1900 to 1960. Look at how many deaths there were in 1960 from measles, okay? It's a statistical 0, all right? And that was 10 years before the measles vaccine even was available to the public. And yet they say that this vaccine saves lives. But there was a hearing where a witness called out Big Pharma and said this. Roll it.
So there were 2 deaths, measles deaths, between 2003 and the present. What didn't come out in the testimony is during that same period of time, again, this is from the Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System, there have been 127 measles vaccine-related deaths. So if we're worried about 1 death or 2 deaths from measles, what about 127 deaths from the vaccine?
Now, I'm not a scientist. I don't understand that, but that guy is, and that's a staggering statistic, sir.
Yeah, Carl, I do believe that the measles vaccine is an important vaccine. Right now, the United States is having a recurrence of measles outbreaks, and the solution to that, as even our Secretary Kennedy, when he went to Texas the first time, said, is to embrace the measles vaccine. Mm-hmm. But I do think we have not very good reporting about the adverse reactions that occur from our vaccines, particularly the COVID vaccines, that you may want to talk about. But I still am an advocate, for the measles vaccine. Yeah. I also want to say I'm a big advocate of RFK. I think what he did in revising the vaccine schedules that he came out with in his group, it makes a lot of sense to me as a former CDC director and infectious disease expert. And I'm disappointed about the medical community and the approach that they've taken to take this into the courts.
Yeah, well, that's actually another thing is they're looking at dropping liability. Congressman Chip Roy is introducing the Libel Act, which would remove all federal liability protections for the COVID-19 vaccine manufacturers. And I'm like, why the hell do these people have immunity anyway?
Yeah, I'm a big advocate that there should not be immunity to these vaccine products. This all happened in the 80s when a lot of the manufacturers were getting out of the business of vaccines and people were concerned we wouldn't have vaccines, and so they made this issue. But I think it would be a good thing to remove the liability and allow the consumers. They may want to put a limit on the award, and they may want to put a limit on how long you have to file for a liability complaint. But these companies should not be immune to liability. That's my point of view.
I would, honestly, sir, I'd even rope in the flu vaccine, see where we go from there. Dr. Robert Redfield, we appreciate it, sir.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Carl. God bless. Yeah.
All right. Well, coming up, New Yorkers voted for big government overreach. Now they're getting the communist special lights out statewide after 11 p.m. maybe. The dark skies bill, if it passes. More in our Culture Clash.
All across the nation, people can't stop talking about Carl Higbie and Frontline for the big news they need to know. Watch Carl Higbie, Frontline, weeknights.
I lost 110 pounds. You couldn't tell at all because of my excess skin. Sonobella changed that.
Introducing the new Lift EX, the just one visit total body transformation.
I decided to give Sonobella a try. You can see my waist.
Lift EX is our breakthrough 360-degree body lift alternative that sculpts, tightens, and lifts your stomach, waist, thighs, and backside. And Lift EX is exclusively available at Sonobello. Easy monthly plans make your best body more affordable than ever. Call to book your free consultation today.
Our family started Cane Brew with a dream and a lot of hard work. Now we're thriving, growing, and hiring. Artificial intelligence has made all the difference for our business. We're a case study for how AI is strengthening American manufacturing. Washington needs to help AI flourish. It's vital to our economic security. We cannot let China dominate these technologies. America must innovate and win. Let's protect our competitive edge.
I'm putting with Abe Lincoln's cane right now.
These are 40-something years old.
Yeah. There we go. Oh, come on!
I really believe that God put us on a course to take care of all these catastrophic needs of service members, Gold Star widows.
It's because of all of them that we get to do what we do.
Let's do good together.
Let's do it. People got to give every time I miss.
You got to give $11.
There we go. You're the man. Donate $11 a month at t2t.org.
Don't kibble your dog.
Hey, Dr. Marty.
Hey, back.
What's wrong with this?
Let's check it out. It's still kibble, which means they're ultra-processed. At Dr. Marty, we freeze-dried premium meats, fruit, and vegetables, and it's available at your local pet store.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work. Try to see a doctor this week or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Order online and save $45. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. Visit urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code NEWS. That's urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code NEWS.
Omaha Steaks semi-annual sale is back. Save 50% site-wide on America's best steaks, chicken, burgers, and more. All backed by our 100% guarantee. Right now, you'll get 12 Omaha Steaks burgers free with your order. Visit omahasteaks.com/TV today.
Have you ever dreamed of getting your business on TV? At growads.com, we produce a high-end TV spot starting at only $950. Then, we air your TV spot on major cable networks in your local area, only at growads.com.
To quote my friend John Jordan, who comes on this show sometimes, the shaft of consequences rarely arrives lubricated. New York lawmakers are now floating a plan to literally turn out the lights after 11 p.m., a statewide push to restrict non-essential lighting overnight, targeting homes, businesses, and even public spaces, all in the name of saving some birds and the energy that they made so expensive, and the view of the stars that you probably can't see through all the New York City smog anyway. So soon New York at night could mirror North Korea from space. Look at that one big obedient void where personal freedoms go to die after curfew. Another incremental slide towards communism. One more rule, one less choice. Newsmax contributor Kay Smythe and host of Tony Katz Today, Tony Katz. Sir, this seems pretty bat you-know-what.
This is standard operating procedure. If the objective is control, then this is how it's done. Take a look at concepts like Vision Zero. Vision Zero, which is the idea that we can reduce all automobile accident fatalities with pedestrians and others. We can bring that number down to zero. Well, that's an easy thing to do if you remove cars from the road. That's why you have things like car diets. That's why you have the push on public transportation and the idea of centralized planning. This is all in the same vein, all in the same place. It's not even cute. There's no debate here. What New Yorkers will go for, I don't know, but they seem willing to go for anything. This is not the Brooklyn I was born in.
Kay, it would be probably better off if we just locked everybody in their house.
Yeah, this time I read this headline, I was like, oh, New York's going to do the purge. Doesn't surprise me. Next.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Gettysburg Borough Mayor Chad Allen Carr, a Democrat who ran the local gay pride parade organization, has stepped down after being arrested for child sex crimes. He's charged with the felony counts of sexual abuse in children and criminal solicitation of commit criminal abuse of children. This is a misdemeanor count and corruption of Kay, you cannot make this up.
No, you can't make it up. And I'm sick of going on Twitter and turning on the TV and seeing yet another person who, why is it always the people who are loudest in the room then get busted for the most heinous, disgusting stuff? This is awful. I pray that the allegations are false and no one was actually hurt, but
who knows?
We'll see. I don't really know what else to say about this, but it would be great if our lawmakers and police, etc., could also go after all the folks on the Epstein list and in the Epstein files. I'm glad this guy's getting busted, but there's a whole treasure trove of guys out there, possibly women, who also need to go down for similar offenses.
And people like that are keeping the stock of Mobark and Brush Bandit very high, in my opinion. Tony, the unhinged Democrats, though, admit that they have more in common with radical Islam than Trump. Watch this nutso stuff.
Who do you have more in common with, a Trump supporter or a radical Islamist?
Radical Islamist.
What is a bigger threat to America today, radical Islam or Trump supporters?
Trump supporters. I'll say Trump. Trump supporters and MAGA.
Yeah.
I would say Trump supporters and MAGA.
I would have to go with the Trump supporters.
Trump supporters and MAGA.
Trump supporters and MAGA.
Good times create soft men.
Well, that is absolutely true. But also, bad media creates bad narratives. And when you aren't honest, you're not willing to be honest about what happens in societies that are Islamist run, you get these kinds of answers. If they've been fed a diet in media of Trump bad, Trump's a threat to democracy, Trump's a threat to women, Trump's a threat to gay, Trump's a threat to this, that, and the other, well, then Trump's a threat. And if you take a look at the concepts of the 99% and the 1%, as Barack Obama talked, the proletariat and the bourgeoisie, there's an oppressed and there's an oppressor. And these poor people must be oppressed because look at Donald Trump. He must be the oppressor. This is a rote Pavlovian response, but it is extremely dangerous and it's going to lead to bad things down the road. We need to control education today.
Right, but speaking of controlling education, Kay, and Islam, by the way, according to a leaked email, a school in Canada, of course, designated its cafeteria a no-food zone because Muslims were fasting. Come on.
Canada, yet again, just being a trash, idiotic neighbor to the greatest country in the world. Carl, I've said this once, I've said this a million times. I grew up with a huge number of Islamic students in my high school. I think at one point it was over 51% Islamic. And we did Ramadan, they did Ramadan every single year. the kids just went to anywhere but the cafeteria.
Right.
I don't know whether this is the school being soft or the kids just being like pathetically needy and not using the common sense of like, if you don't want to be around food, go to where the food isn't at. Duh.
Yeah. Seems simple.
You know,
Really simple.
it just seems like a pretty
We,
easy solution to me.
Yeah, we got to leave it there. Kay, Tony, pleasure as always.
Thanks, Carl.
All right, Dems love ruling, and they hate who they rule. Another example, rules for thee, but not for me. We got 2A Tuesday. This is insane. Next.
Kibble. It's been the standard for decades, and it's failing our dogs. That's why we created Badlands Ranch Superfood Complete. It's gently air-dried, locking in the nutrients and the flavor dogs go wild for. Visit your local pet food retailer today.
Like a relentless weed, moderate to severe ulcerative colitis symptoms can keep coming back. Break away to what's possible with Tremfya, with rapid relief at 4 weeks. Many people experienced remission at 1 and even 2 years. Some saw 100% visible healing of their intestinal lining. Serious allergic reactions and increased risk of infections and liver problems may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and TB. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or if you need a vaccine. Healing is possible with Tremfya. Tremfya now offers self-administration from the start. Ask your doctor about Tremfya today.
A better heart health supplement. That's what we all want. That's why for 8 years now, I've relied on this heart powder. It's Super Beats, and I swear by it.
Super Beats is the original #1 selling beet brand for healthy blood pressure support. The only cardiologist-recommended beet brand that's also trusted by over 40 national championship-winning pro and college sports teams for cardio-powered energy.
For cardio results you can feel, the only brand I trust is Super Beats.
Try Super Beats today at human.com.
Michael Youssef here. You know, there can be no Christianity without the Christ of the cross and the resurrection of Jesus. That is why Christianity is not a religious system, it is a person. And Christ is inviting you to experience his grace and mercy.
To find out more about the one who welcomes you with open arms, visit findingtruepeace.com.
To a hacker, your tax return isn't just paperwork, it's a gold mine. Your social security number and bank data are their biggest payday of the year. Old antivirus software can't keep up. You need PCmatic. Our default deny technology blocks every single threat that hasn't been pre-approved. If we don't know it, we block it. Secure your return right now. Buy PCmatic antivirus and we will give you PCmatic VPN for free. American-made security for homes, businesses, and government agencies. Visit PCmatic.com.
Go ahead, crank the volume. We got you. USPS has increased daily package processing capacity by 46% in the past 5 years. And with USPS Ground Advantage, your packages stay in our secure network, dock to door, nationwide. For full visibility, near real-time tracking, affordable pricing, for peace of mind. USPS Ground Advantage.
All right, it's 2A Tuesday, so let's do some gun stuff. The libs in Virginia are the actual worst. We told you last week that they want to take away your assault weapons, which they can't define, from law-abiding Virginians and throw you in jail for storing a firearm in your car. But when it comes to them, Virginia Democrats just carved out an exemption for themselves from some of those restrictions. Listen to the Republican State Senator Richard Stewart absolutely destroy this hypocrisy.
General Assembly. We are a citizen legislature. We are citizens just like everybody else. We go back home. We interact with their constituents. We're a part of the community. We are no better than anybody else. And we should never vote for a bill that gives us a special privilege over any other citizen.
Unbelievable. Cam Edwards, host of the Bearing Arms Cam and Company podcast, and AWR Hawkins, Second Amendment reporter for Breitbart News. Cam, you from Virginia must be reeling in this.
You know, Carl, I was so ticked off. This is family friendly, so I can't tell you what my reaction really was when I heard this news over the weekend. But I got to say, the senator had an impact. The Democrat-controlled House passed that bill that did exempt members of the General Assembly from a gun storage bill. But when it went over to the Senate for confirmation, you had the senator, you had other Republicans call out the Democrats, and the Senate actually refused to go along. So this bill went back to a conference committee the last day of the legislative session. That provision was stripped out, and thankfully, it's a terrible bill still, but at least it is not full of hypocrisy. It's just full of anti-gun nonsense.
Right, but it wouldn't have unless he said something. That's the bad
Absolutely.
part. Yeah, they would
Yeah,
all...
I mean, listen, House Democrats, they passed it. They were okay with it. And I imagine the Senate Democrats would have been too had Republicans not called them out on this.
Yeah, but listen to this Virginia Democrat, Garrett McGuire, argue in favor, AWR, of a bill banning anyone under 21 from buying, possessing, or transporting a gun using the brave Old Dominion ROTC cadets who beat the terrorist Mohammed Jalla to death with their bare hands. He used that as an example of why you don't need a gun. Roll it.
We know that it's not always true that you need a gun to fight back someone with a gun, because those hero cadets didn't. Levu Labrescu, a Holocaust survivor, professor at Virginia Tech, didn't have a gun when he selflessly gave up his body to prevent the Virginia Tech shooter from entering his classroom and saving lives that day.
Dude, he was literally killed. What do you mean? What, AWR?
I mean, I'm like Cam on this one. It's family friendly, so I'll watch my language, but this is infuriating. And what he missed, those ROTC students should be praised. Praise them.
Yeah.
They did great. But the instructor was killed because he was not armed. That is a gun-free campus. Old Dominion is a gun-free campus, but it wasn't gun-free when the attacker came because the attacker wanted the advantage.
Right.
The gun-free stuff does not work, and it makes sitting ducks of law-abiding citizens.
If you find yourself in a fair fight, your tactics suck. Speaking of sucking, Mazie Hirono doing Hawaii absolutely proud again, saying that if they pass the SAVE Act, it'll then be easier to buy assault rifles, which she can't define. Hawaii, though, Cam, requires a permit to buy any type of gun, including an AR-15, which means you need a safety course and a background check and then a permit to purchase it. So I love when people who have never bought a gun tell us how easy it is, they think it is, I should say, to buy a gun.
Yeah, absolutely, right? I mean, even in Virginia, if I go to a gun store, I'm going to have to show ID. I'm going to have to pass a background check before I can walk out with that assault firearm that the Democrats are banning. Hawaii's even worse. They've got that permit to purchase requirement that you talk about. That's only good, I think, for like 26 days or 28 days, Carl. After you actually get one, it expires. You've got to go buy the gun, and you've got to list the make, the model, and the serial number of the gun you want to buy before you can get that permit to purchase. This is absolute nonsense.
AWR, last 30 to you.
I mean, it's just crazy. They're doing the same thing, Cam. The Democrats are pushing in Rhode Island right now that you have to get a firearm training certificate by passing a course before you can even acquire a gun in a gun store. All of these states are doing it that are Democrat run, and it's a violation. There are 4 words, Carl, and I love them. I know you do. Shall not be infringed. We're going to have to get back to that somehow, some way.
Mm-hmm. Tea in Harbor, my friends. Cam, AWR, always a pleasure. All right, before we go, he led the Union Army in the Civil War, but now Great Grant's heir is doing something so dumb. Next.
You know, everybody's reporting the same stories, the same spin. You turn the channel, it's always the same. But not us. We're different. We report the real news. No spin, just the facts. Turn to us, and you won't turn back.
Tune in to Rob Schmidt tonight on Newsmax.
What if you're sick at home or traveling and can't get medical help or prescriptions? Doctors say a medical emergency kit is the answer. Joining me is Dr. Drew.
Thank you. And yes, these kits put you in charge of your health. They come with physician-prescribed medication to treat multiple common and some serious issues as well.
What are some examples?
Sure. Generic Z-Pak, amoxicillin, other essential antibiotics and antivirals that treat flu, pneumonia, strep, ear infections, sinus infections, urinary tract infections, and more.
So it is like urgent care and a pharmacy at home?
Exactly. No waiting, no pharmacy, no copays. You feel better faster and avoid serious complications.
How do you know what medicines to take?
You just match your symptoms to the doctor-written guide or schedule a quick telehealth call.
Sound advice. Order online in minutes at the website below and save $45. Thank you, doctor.
Visit urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code news.
As a neurologist, my patients are often concerned with age-related memory decline. I recommend Cunol Brain Health with 2 powerful, high-absorption ingredients clinically shown to improve memory, focus, attention, and more. Cunol, the brand I trust.
In 2021, I got a call from the president, and I was awarded the Medal of Honor. Every elite organization I've been a part of had one thing in common, and that was standards that were enforced. This is how we do business. This is how we're going to hold each other accountable. So when you have those shared goals and standards, that's what keeps an organization honest. And that's what Proof brings to the table. I would say without a doubt, they hold a standard that most businesses would find unreasonable. Proof makes the finest wallet I've ever owned.
Allergy congestion hits me hard. That's why I Navage.
Navage flushes out allergens, mucus, and germs, even 99% of viruses, in just 30 seconds. Preferred by millions, trusted by doctors. There's only one Navage.
This one goes better with the walls.
This is so much easier than the home improvement store.
There's the measurement fee, delivery fee, restocking fee.
And installation.
Oh, no. That's not my department.
With Empire's Home Floor Advantage, we have clear, all-inclusive pricing. No surprises. And installation is on your schedule.
Call or visit EmpireToday.com and get the Home Floor Advantage.
800-588-2300 Empire.
Why go on Roe? Because 1 in 4 guys experience ED. On Roe, ED feels like no big deal. Connect with a provider to find treatment that could be right for you. 100% online.
Roe designed or curated treatments to make ED feel less stressful. There are options to fit every need, like fast-acting dissolvables or daily gummies. If 1 in 4 guys deal with ED,
then 1 in 4 guys should go on Roe.
Guys, connect with a provider at roe.co to see if you qualify.
I'm an artist, and I'm in my studio. I'm hearing the ads about Relief Factor, and I've got pain in my neck, and it's getting worse, and I'm thinking, well, I'm going to go ahead and order this. 2 weeks later, and I've got much better range of motion. I'm able to carry these big canvases around. I'm just very, very grateful that I gave the product a try.
If pain is affecting your life, give Relief Factor a try. Call or go online. Get your 3-week quick start for only $19.95. Fight pain naturally with Relief Factor.
Well, you know what they say, hard times make hard men. You know, like the Civil War hero and former U.S. President Ulysses S. Grant. In turn, those hard men make good times. The good times then make weak men. And weak men make gay vampire novels, like Ulysses S. Grant's great-great-grandson. Ulysses Grant Dietz has written a number of gay vampire books. I will say that again. Gay vampire books. The great-grandson of the man who Abraham Lincoln trusted to save the Union is now writing knockoff Twilight-adjacent stories about homosexual vampires who love life and looking for a house in New Jersey. It's riveting. Imagine if, you know, Dietz had been born in place of his great-grandfather. The South would have surely won the war. The village people at Vicksburg. Imagine that. Richmond falls and rainbow flags rise. Sherman's march to the sea would look more like a fabulous pride parade, Schmidt.
Where do you find these stories? Ulysses S. Grant.
And I also have a totally fire Twitter feed.
Yeah, you do. And you know what? Count Dracula was definitely gay.
Was he?
I mean, that accent gave it away, didn't it?
All right.
Is that all? You're done? I'm just saying. Carl left. I guess we're going to do this show.